Warning! Warning! This podcast contains spoilers. Listen at your own risk.
Welcome to Medium Shift, the podcast that investigates how stories stack up from medium to medium through the adaptation process.
Today, we're looking at Marvel's first family with the Fantastic Four.
Welcome to Medium Shift. I'm Chris.
And I'm Ev.
So this week we're going to do the 2005 Fantastic Four film and its follow-up Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, which sadly we'll get into are the best Fantastic Four movies of the four that have been released, but are one of the more interesting ones to talk about. So quickly to go into a plot summary of the first one, a group of astronauts gain superpowers after cosmic radiation exposure and must use them to oppose the plan of their enemy, Dr. Victor Von Doom.
We will also be looking at its 2007 sequel, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. After defeating Von Doom, the Fantastic Four can really enjoy life now. All four are now comfortable with their new powers. The Thing and Johnny Storm now get along with each other, and Sue Storm is now planning to be Mrs. Fantastic. Galactus, an evil creature in space, has decided that Earth is its new target and sends a Silver Surfer to destroy it. Reed Richards and his team must now work together to capture the Surfer and must now team up with one individual who they didn't expect to help.
It's a shame the plot for the second one spoils the first one, but not that I'm really recommending anyone see these films. So,
Oh, I am.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get into the film critique, shall we? So what do we think of Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer?
They
That was a long pause.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of feelings. Basically, I think everyone should see this for all the good parts and all the very, very bad parts about it.
Right.
The good parts being the lovely Chris Evans, who we have been celebrating with this Evans Fest.
Sure.
Even though, this is going to be a little weird, I don't think he was the best actor in the movie.
Really?
No, I actually think that goes to Ewan Grufflin.
Oh, yeah, The Thing.
No.
No, Mr. Fantastic.
Yes, Mr. Fantastic.
I forgot, they've both got weird names that I always constantly forget.
Yeah.
Yep.
I understand. But no, Ewan Grufflin was Mr. Fantastic, who, I mean, aside from his accent, which made me think he was trying to channel Brandon Routh, which was not good because he's Welsh and trying to do an American accent, it didn't work. But aside from that, I think he actually sort of balanced what little he had in terms of personality and actually gave Mr. Fantastic some form of personality, which was highly lacking. That was one of the bad things that I think you should watch it for.
Wow, okay.
Because there's a lot of things on how to make just a C-grade movie.
So it's...
So if you are writing terrible movies, watch this because it will improve it. And if you're writing great movies, watch this because you can miss all the pitfalls, potholes.
Right, okay. So this is just a solid textbook example about how to make a mediocre film. That's essentially what you're saying?
Yes.
Sure, okay. So our opinions don't, are actually surprisingly aligned, because I feel kind of similar in that this is just a really aggressively mediocre film. I don't find this as offensively bad or makes me egregiously angry as some of the other movies we've done on this podcast thus far. So really, I think it's just... uninteresting with like flat characters. The villain is awful, which is honestly one thing that we were really going to have to talk about. Just generally speaking about both films, I feel like they have a lot of similar problems as well. I just don't think they're particularly interesting. I don't think they embrace their source material at all. And as depressing as it is, I think the Fantastic Four just deserve better, considering how pivotal they've been to comic book history, and Marvel especially. The fact that they've had 4 feature film adaptations and none of them are good, ranging from aggressively awful in the 1994 one and the 2015 one to just mediocre in these, which is frankly just sad. The fact that this is, of the 4 Fantastic Four movies, these are the best 2, and just saying that fact makes my insides just crunch up, because they deserve more.
It is kind of sad that the best Fantastic Four movie is not a Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, which did influence this film, and we'll be getting into, I'm sure, briefly. But yeah, just everyone go watch The Incredibles.
Yeah.
It's just a better... It's just this film, but better. Well, not incredibly this film, but it has a lot of the same elements and draws heavily from the Fantastic Four
If you're adapting
itself.
Fantastic Four, that is how you do it with The Incredibles.
Just remake The Incredibles. Yeah, just stop.
Live action The Incredibles. That would be interesting.
That would be interesting. I don't know if I'd be okay with that, but it would be interesting. Yeah, I'm just glad that Marvel, as horrifying as the Disney Fox deal is for monopolies and how powerful Disney is becoming, it makes me happy that Marvel's first family is returning to Marvel, so that we might finally see a good rendition of the Fantastic Four on the screen, because I really think they deserve it, considering how much I really like these characters. Honestly, I was kind of surprised, especially doing the research for this episode, how much of a fan I am of the Fantastic Four, which is not something I've properly registered for the most part, because as I said, I don't think any of the movies are any good, but I remember seeing a lot of them in the animated series, and reading a lot of the comics, and just experiencing the characters through other Marvel comics as well. I really like a lot of these people, and I think they have a really interesting kind of dichotomy, and are obviously really important to comic book history, so yeah, it just kind of makes me sad that this is all we're stuck with, unfortunately.
The worst thing about it, I feel, is that new fans who aren't comic readers are going to look at these films and think Fantastic Four are just sort of a minor character in the Marvel spectrum and leave it with the Spider-Mans and the Iron Mans. They were some of the greatest, influential characters for the Marvel continuity.
Yeah, 100%. They're Marvel's first family. They are the things that put Marvel on the map. So, I mean, if we want to move into the sources, the original Fantastic Four comic book is so pivotal to comics as a medium, because it moved away from just these sort of godlike characters that were really popular in DC and such, to actually more sort of broken, relatable human characters. This is kind of the first comic book that you had a superhero team that would go out and fight giant monsters and everything, but at the same time, squabbled amongst themselves and had conflicts and were real people. And it's really that mentality and that approach to characters is not only something that has influenced all of comic books, but is so integral to the foundations of Marvel. Because all Marvel characters are basically just flawed individuals with great abilities, and it's that constant dichotomy between the two of them. And Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four, started that trend. And you're right, I think it's really upsetting that a lot of people don't appreciate him in the way that they should.
You mentioned how pivotal it was to the rest of the characters that came after the Fantastic Four. A lot of that is thanks to Stan Lee, who almost left Marvel and stopped writing comics after just floundering in the sort of death of superhero comics. And it wasn't until he was given one more sort of opportunity to do what he wanted in the Fantastic Four that he kept going.
Oh, by God. So it's literally because of the Fantastic Four that not only do we have to thank for Marvel today, but also Stan Lee and also Spider-Man and everything else he has created. It's the one thing that does make me really annoyed about this film. Not that it's egregiously awful, but just the fact that how much of a disservice it is to the characters themselves. So
we can also thank the Fantastic Four for essentially the DC Marvel rivalry, because they were just made in retaliation for the Justice League, which also really needs a good movie adaptation. But that's a different episode.
Yeah, we'll get onto that another time. There's plenty of comic books to talk about and such. But yeah, so I think obviously it's a little bit difficult because it's one of those kind of depressing things, which another one of the things that makes me annoyed about this film is that so much of the time the success of the movies and the mainstream popularity affects the comic books onto itself. And even though Fantastic Four have always been so crucial throughout Marvel's history, they have waned since their movie rights have waned because there is less creative influence and interest in them. So just people don't read the comics and they get less comics and so on and so forth. That's not to say everything bad, the Fantastic Four have just been terrible and all that, because they've had a lot of really interesting reinventions recently.
It doesn't help that some of the Marvel suits just went, you know what, we don't have the rights, so we're not going to add more to these characters. We'll just stick with what we have, because if we create more, that's more fodder for, in this case, it was Universal? Fox.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Fox, there's a whole rights things when it comes to Fox and
Universal was the Hulk issues and why they stopped.
Yeah.
That, and Fox was why also all the X-Men died.
Well, yeah.
Constantly. In the comics.
That too. So it's just kind of, it's annoying because the corporate synergy of these characters kind of doomed them. Doomed them. I'm sorry. In that respect in the comics as well, which I just think is really annoying. I just think it's a disservice. And it was a really weird discovery of myself looking at these characters and all that and thinking, oh yeah, I really like a lot of this. And it's just kind of made me sad that this is the best we've got. But oh well. Anyway, do we want to move into specific details then?
Yeah, we can try and find some positives, I feel.
Yeah, sure.
One of those positives that I want to talk about was the sort of interactions you had with the Thing and Johnny Storm. I feel that was one of the few things I actually got right about the family dynamic in this movie.
Yeah.
That a lot of the other two kind of lost in that sort of hot-headed, almost childlike rivalry that the two of them had.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about in regards to the characters in this movie, because I think they generally get the broad strokes of them. Like, Reed is the sort of aloof egghead scientist, Ben Grimm is sort of like the salt of the earth guy, although I do wish they play that up a little bit more, and Johnny's the hothead one. Like, they all fit the archetypes, but there's just not really much more beyond. It feels like a really surface reading of just the family dynamics of the Fantastic Four. So you get the kind of dynamic that you're talking about, but so much of sort of the nuance and the relationships between them is kind of missed, honestly. So no, it's a real shame. It's I mean, I don't know if a lot of the actors are particularly terrible. I do kind of agree with you that I think the casting for Mr. Fantastic is quite good. I think you're right. I think the writing kind of fails him, which I think is a synonym for a lot of them as well. I think the guy who plays the Thing is actually quite good as well. Like, not only does he look the part, and the weird rubber suit is dated, yeah, I know, but I do appreciate that it was a practical effect, and he wasn't just a bad CGI character walking around, because especially in 2005, that would have looked absolutely horrendous.
I think it also adds that big plastic suit being practical and being very comic-y in the sense. It was one of the few things that sort of alluded to that classic Jack Kirby style illustration. One of the great things in the comics is the wonderful worlds that were created and drawn by Jack Kirby, especially in regards to like Fantastic Four and things like Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, Doctor Strange is psychedelic as hell.
Yeah. And they were fantastic. They really came off the page. And I feel that was lacking in the movie. Except in terms of the Thing, I feel it actually could have been just taken out of a Jack Kirby comic book and put in. Yeah. Although without the eyebrows for some reason. Yeah,
sure. I do really miss the eyebrows, to be honest. It's such a distinctive part of his image, and his head looks so weird without him. But anyway, yeah, I think you're kind of right. You kind of hit the nail on the head in regards that it is dorky, but the dorky earnestness of it is kind of alluding back to the original comics, which I think is kind of nice. So you definitely, one of the things you definitely we need to talk about as well is the flat direction for the film itself. And it's one of the things in that so much of the Fantastic Four comics in the original were really creative in their monster designs and visuals and everything, but there's not really any of that in this film. And I think a lot of that kind of comes down to not only the studio meddling, of which there is a lot. There is a long and storied history about the rights of the Fantastic Four. I think there was 4 or 5 different directors attached to this film from 1995 to 2005. And the final guy that they got, Tim Story, is really just a workman director. I haven't seen too many of his other films, but from what I have seen, there's nothing really distinct or interesting about his style, and he was literally just brought on to shoot a script, and he does that perfectly serviceable, but there's nothing else beyond that, really, which is a real shame. I think it was kind of missing that passion that we've seen in a lot of the other Marvel studios and just other good superhero films, really. It felt like, it felt really corporatized, which I think kind of goes back to the mediocrity. I mean, there's, 3 or 4 different scenes with contemporary pop songs playing over the back, which is just the easiest way to date your movie so quickly, but it really makes the corporates scream their pants, so it's really annoying. We could probably talk briefly about the rights issue as well, just because it's kind of tangentially relevant to this film. So
yeah, so at the time of this movie's release, Fox had access to Fantastic Four, and theoretically what was contained in that universe, although...
Which is contentious, to say the least.
Yes.
That's a whole other thing.
There were a couple other things, as well. One of the characters that is brought up a lot in Fantastic Four is Namor the Submariner. But they had no access to him. He was in a weird limbo with Universal, who I think had the full rights, unlike what they did with the Hulk, which was their sort of mutual rights, although now it's sort of come back and it's a confusing thing. But basically...
confusing thing.
Yeah,
we're hitting a lot of the names this episode.
I think it just helps that his name is Thing.
Yeah, true, very true.
Yeah, you can't really bring in Storm as much.
We'll try. I'll find a way to shoehorn it in later. But yeah, no, you're right. So a lot of the rights were kind of contentious there. And there was a whole thing. So like, you know, a lot of people know about kind of how Marvel was going bankrupt in the 90s and sold off a lot of their comic rights, film adaptations and everything like that, which is how we got Spider-Man, which is how we got the X-Men, Daredevil, everything like that. But the Fantastic Four is an interesting case in that the rights were actually bought in 1983. Weirdly enough, like ages before, basically, and for some weird reason, like they just bounced around the development hell, and no one really wanted to make the movie, which actually led to the terrible film in 1994 that was never supposed to be released. That was a movie made for I think $1 million or somewhere around there, like a really, really small figure, and literally just made to hold on to the rights so that we could get this 2005 film, which just. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that film. But
what about the 2015, which was also very much skewered by the deadline if they had to release a film within, I think it was 7 years of the last one, which was 2009, being Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
So they basically were on the precipice of, oh crap, we need something as well. So corporate meddling, release. So yeah, the rights is probably one of the biggest issues across all Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah, that is a true arch nemesis. I mean, considering how pathetic Doctor Doom is in all of these films, I'm not surprised. But they should be fighting lawyers. They shouldn't be fighting some guy from Latveria. Oh, it's really annoying. We are going to have to do an episode on Fantastic Four 2015. Fan Four Stick, yes. So, but that'll be sometime down the line. I'm gonna have to prepare myself for that episode. But yeah, really, like it's hard because so much of the production was clearly marred by problems in regards to the adaptation process, which is sort of the one thing we talk about. But rights and legalities is so much a big part of that, and especially in comics when there's so many. As you were talking about before, grey areas about who exists with who, and who owns the rights to who, and who has the marketing rights to this, and so on and so forth. That it's really kind of... Frankly, I think it shows in the final product that this is just a corporate mandated, tied up in legalities kind of thing, which I think is sad for the product itself, but that's just the way things go. Yeah, we've kind of tangentially talked about it as well, but if we really want to get into the big sticking point of these films, the one thing that does make me really annoyed is the portrayal of Dr. Doom.
Doom!
Yeah, or smarmy business guy with metal skin, because that's Doom, right? That's the Dr. Doom we all do.
Victor Von Magneto.
Oh, God, yeah. It's just... See, this is the other thing. Like, Fantastic Four is so integral to the comics, but Doctor Doom is so integral to the Marvel Universe. Like, he is the big bad. Like, he is... I don't know if there's, like, a comparison in DC, but, like, Doctor Doom is constantly being heralded as, like, the huge kind of evil, like, the personification of antagonism in the Marvel Universe. But he just sucks in these films. Like, they get nothing right. Like, instead of being this, like, sort of tragic backstory in Latveria and connected to Reed Richards and then the whole vain arrogance and everything like that, he's just a smarmy, kind of annoying business guy who goes evil because money? I don't even know if his motivations are properly clear. It's just really stupid. And the actor they get for him, I don't even want to give him the service of his name, but he's just completely miscast. And the whole direction of the character is just wrong in both of these films, and just makes me really, really annoyed.
Yeah, I can only see one positive out of the Doom character, and that's he looked pretty good in the suit. And even then, that's stretching it.
Yeah, stretching it. We got another one in.
But no, and I think that's also mainly compared to, again, the two other films that released. It's probably the best, which is unfortunate.
Why? Oh, God.
But yes, no. For those who don't know, in comic history, one of the things about Doom, aside from the fact that he is... kind of linked to the Fantastic Four because of his antagonistic relationship with Reed Richards, is that everything else that this movie presented about his origin basically made up for the movie.
Yeah.
So he doesn't gain powers from any cosmic rays. Instead, it's just his incredible intelligence, which is on level with Reed Richards, which was lost in this movie. Yeah. As well as him basically picking up magic from... first Tibetan monks, and then essentially the same people who taught Doctor Strange.
Yeah, and the devil.
And the devil.
There's a bit of the devil in there.
And then he takes over Latveria, and that gives him diplomatic immunity by being a weird dictator, but kind of works, and people actually don't mind him. He's just a dick to everyone else. And the suit is really just sort of his own ego getting in the way of him.
Yeah,
basically.
essentially. So I would actually recommend, because I think it's a fantastic comic, but everyone should go out and read Books of Doom, which is, I think 2005, 2006, somewhere around there, a retelling of Doom's origin originally from the comics. Yeah, so basically the general gist of it is he was a lonely orphan in Latveria. He was abandoned by his mother. He's going through a bunch of hardships. But he has, as you mentioned, he's a genius intellect, and he kind of has the willpower and the drive of, say, Batman, or a character like that, basically. He met Reed Richards, which is his really only major connection to the Fantastic Four in college, where he was basically challenged by Reed's intellect. Like, the one defining trait about Doom is his ego, basically, his arrogance. And the whole fact that his whole dichotomy with Reed is that he wants to prove that he's a superior man through his intellect, through beating him in battle, everything like that, basically.
There's a great story arc in one of these where Doctor Doom basically both saves Sue Storm's daughter while she's giving birth and fixes Johnny Storm's issues with his power at the time. And the only reason he does it is because Reed Richards couldn't do it, and he wanted to prove that he could do something better than Reed Richards.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a great motivation, and it makes for such an interesting character. Because, I mean, the reason he wears the mask that you sort of alluded to as well is that when he met Reed in the university, Doom was trying to create an experiment to bring his mother back from the devil. There's a whole other thing in regards to Satanism and everything like that, which we don't need to get into. But basically, he was trying to create some sort of device to save his mother's soul. But Reed noticed a problem in the calculations and realized that it was going to self-destruct in his face. But Doom completely ignored him. He's like, no, I'm the genius. I'm not going to trust you because obviously I'm the arrogant one. And it ended up blowing up in his face. And he got, according to him, horribly scarred, which is why he wears the mask. But that's the other thing, because it also connects to his arrogance, because the horrible scar is literally like a really kind of light scarring over the top of his forehead and eye. Like, it's really insignificant. But the fact that he is so arrogant and so vain about not only his appearance, but also his intellect, that he feels so ashamed that he needs to hide it behind that mask, which is just it's so good. So, but yeah, but none of that shows up in the film. So yeah, it's really upsetting, because I do think Doom is a fantastic character, and his whole relationship with Latveria, and as you're kind of talking about, sort of he is a dictator, but since he wants to prove he is such a superior individual, he runs his country so well, and that there's kind of like no poverty, and there's incredible security, and everyone is taken care of, because he just wants to prove how amazing an individual he is, even if he is a dictator. Like, it's great. And in the movie, he's just a dick.
He's a dick in a suit.
He's a dick in a suit. And that's really all we could say about him. And I think it's the one true major disservice when it comes to all of these films, because none of these movies have got Doctor Doom right. Honestly, nothing outside of the comics really has ever properly gotten Doctor Doom right. And I think it's just really disappointing, and makes for a weak villain in this film, and not only the biggest change from the comics, but frankly the biggest middle finger to the comics, I think. So, yeah.
I feel we should also talk about the other villain in these movies.
Oh yeah, if we want
Silver Surfer.
Yeah, if we want to kind of segue into the sequel a little bit.
Yes. Well, because Doom is also weirdly the bad guy in the second one as well.
Yeah.
Which also, it gave him powers closer to what he has in the comics, but in doing that, just made him look like even more of a dick, and also an ineffectual one as well. Because he has the power of the cosmic at his hands, and the best he can do is make some tornadoes and...
Just gonna surf around China for a little bit. Yeah, throw some rocks.
Yeah.
That's essentially it.
He sort of waved his hands out, and that caused buildings to come apart, but also not fall down.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, even Zod got destruction of buildings better than he did.
Well, yeah, I know.
And that was incidental.
Hell, Superman destroyed more buildings than he did. But it's his portrayal in the second film doesn't do him any favors, and just goes deeper down the rabbit hole. They basically just double down on how terrible a character he was in the first film and the second. So yeah, if we did want to talk about the one major positive that I do have in regards to both of these films, which largely less than the sequel, but that is the Silver Surfer.
Yes.
I think that's probably the best portrayal of any of the comic characters in those two films.
Oh, absolutely.
I really think they get, like, so the Silver Surfer, for people who don't know, is the Herald of Galactus. So Galactus is kind of this world-devouring figure which goes around, like, literally eating planets to sustain himself. At one point in time, he comes across a planet where the Silver Surfer, whose original name is Norrin Rad, lives, and Norrin makes a deal with Galactus to say, if you spare my homeworld and my family, I will work for you as the Silver Surfer. And so basically the Silver Surfer goes around the galaxy finding planets for Galactus to eat.
Yeah.
So, and which is, I think, is a really interesting character because there's kind of a tragic element because he's essentially a slave to Galactus and doesn't want to destroy all these planets, but is literally just doing it to protect his own homeworld. And that, I think, kind of comes across in the film. Like, not only does he have the voice of Lawrence Fishburne, which is just great. I mean, you've already got a big plus there, honestly. But it's one of those... It's honestly the only example I can think of where bad CGI or iffy CGI works in the film's favour. In that the fact that the Silver Surfer, it doesn't look terrible, but he kind of exists in this uncanny valley adds to the mystique and kind of the
He looks alien, but also weirdly human.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the fact...
So you can kind of relate to him, but at the same time, he's sort of being pushed back.
Yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. And I really think that works in the character's favour. Not to mention that the way they portray his power set in the film and everything, the way he kind of bends reality with the board and everything, I think is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
that scene that we keep playing in every trailer of him just falling through the board to stare back at during film, I absolutely love that.
yeah. It's pretty cool, to be honest.
It is damn cool.
Yeah. And really, really accurate to the comics. So, take notes, Doctor Doom. This is how you make a good character from adapting properly from the comic books. Yep. The downside to the way they portrayed the Silver Surfer is the way they portray Galactus.
What? No, Galactus wasn't in this movie. What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I refuse to acknowledge this.
Sorry, I was referring to the CGI diarrhea cloud that comes to consume the Earth at the end of the movie. Another thing that fans of the comic may not be familiar with, but in the comic books, Galactus is just a giant man. Basically, a giant purple man with like a weird kind of horned, tall helmet.
Effectively, he was a person from a planet before our universe and who managed to make a deal and take on the conscience of the universe or the source of the universe. They've changed its name a few times in the comics, I'm not entirely sure. To basically become this giant figure to survive into the next universe. But the only way he can survive is by devouring planets, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
As a giant purple man.
Exactly. Eating planets. Yeah, so frankly, it is kind of a really dorky design in the comic books, but as you were kind of referring back to earlier with the Jack Kirby aesthetic, it really fits into that design. So what they try and do in the film is not show any of that and just show it as just an evil diarrhea cloud that comes to kind of swallow up the Earth.
And the worst thing is, for me, was they wanted to have giant Galactus. They had storyboards which looked fantastic. And they have so many hints, like his helmet in the actual
silhouette
cloud.
shows up at the beginning of the film.
So you could clearly see they wanted to, but something just went, nope, can't do that. Dust cloud. Evil dust cloud.
I think it goes back to the corporate meddling thing, honestly, and that we can't show this really stupid design on screen. Just make it, a faceless antagonist or something like that. It's just...
It was basically the mid-2000s version of a giant blue skybeam.
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good point, because a similar thing shows up in Green Lantern as well,
Yes.
with Parallax, another diarrhea space cloud.
Which was a lot cooler in the comics.
Yeah,
There's a running theme here. Don't make your things either giant sky beams or giant diarrhea clouds.
Yeah, exactly, because it's never going to turn out well. No. So it's disappointing. And on one hand, I can understand that Galactus is a difficult character to do on screen, in that he is so kind of massive and so of the comic book aesthetic, but at the same time, I think it would have been really great if they made a really good effort. As you sort of mentioned with the storyboards, there was potential there, but they shied away from it at the last minute, which was really frustrating. So, it just,
And now I'm sad.
Yeah. It's one of the weird things, it's one of the weird trends that I've found about talking about these movies, but it always tends to amplify my feelings about the film. Once you sort of verbalize it in a way, you realize, oh man, there's a lot of things these films really don't do very well, so... I mean, one thing we should sort of reiterate, we don't think this is like abhorrent, representations of the cinematic art form or anything like that. They're just...
I think if you're looking for something for fun and don't care too much about comics and comic history, this is something you can just settle down with, and it's just a
Yeah.
Bit of a nice little romp to occupy either an hour and a half or 2 hours, depending on which version of the film you see.
Well, yeah, sure. That's a whole other thing.
But yes, if you care anything for the Fantastic Four, stay away. Stay far away.
Yeah. It's
Go watch The Incredibles.
yeah, just go watch. I think that should just be a mantra for this this podcast. Every time we're talking about a comic book movie, just go watch The Incredibles. They did it better. So it's unfortunate. I still have hope for the future that one day we're going to have a proper on-screen portrayal of the Fantastic Four. And as I kind of mentioned, they get the general tropes of the characters right, but it's really not quite there. It's unfortunate, but this is what we're stuck with. Unfortunately, of the best of the 4 Fantastic Four movies. Okay. Do we want to move on to do it differently?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Unless we want to talk about Chris Evans, given that this is Evans Fest.
Oh yeah, sure. We can tangentially mention Chris Evans. Yeah, he's fine. He's good. Yeah.
He's good. He's better in the other Marvel movies.
He is.
In a weird...
What a surprise. If you give a good actor a good script, he's going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm not sure about the first Fantastic Four movie, about their Johnny Storm. But every other Johnny Storm has gone on to do bigger and better things. Chris Evans, bigger and better things. Michael B. Jordan, bigger and better things.
Hell yeah.
Bill fucking Murray, bigger and better things. For those who don't know, Bill Murray played Johnny Storm in the original radio version. That was narrated by Stan Lee.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't actually know that little factoid. That's
It
cool.
only went for like 10 episodes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yes, that was pre-SNL days, so better things.
That's very cool. Yeah, man, the blessing of the blessing of the Human Torch. Isn't that interesting?
It's a blessing and a curse.
Well, yeah, sure, because you have to play the Human Torch first. Yeah. I mean, that is one character that just, like, Chris Evans is good enough as kind of the heartthrob, hot-headed guy, but I do think his talents are being a little bit wasted, I guess. But I think a lot of that just comes down to the writing. So, and I think that applies to a lot of the characters. Of the 4 main cast members, I really think all of them are okay, except for maybe Jessica Alba. But I mean, that whole character is literally just there for the sex appeal and for a love interest, which is also a disservice to the comics because she's actually a really interesting character in the comics. And one thing that they kind of harp on in the comics a lot is that she is the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four and basically the one binding force that keeps everyone together. But
She's the maternal figure, basically.
Yeah.
The one thing that's keeping the family from... keeping the family as a family.
yeah, exactly. But in this, she strips in, 3 or 4 different scenes?
Yep.
Which, funnily enough, was only added after Jessica Alba was cast in the role.
Huh.
Big surprise!
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just... That's probably the biggest miss of the 4 cast. Even if, the broad strokes are still there, it's just not very good. So, yeah. So if we want to move into Do It Differently then...
Yep. Jingle, jingle, jingle.
We've gotten really good at syncing that. We don't even need to look at each other anymore. It's just, we know when it's coming. That's great. All right.
Still doesn't make up for the fact that it's just a terrible jingle.
Sure. Do you want to go first or shall I?
Up to you.
Okay. I can go first because I suspect mine's going to be a little bit of the shorter one. Mine's kind of interesting is in that this might actually happen. Probably not, but might actually happen. In that I want to take a completely different approach to this and just not make a Fantastic Four movie and just make a Doom origin film. So base it on the books of Doom retelling of the origin story that I mentioned before, which is great. And you can tie into the Fantastic Four a little bit, but for the most part I just want to focus on him as a character and just have it written by Noah Hawley, who, funnily enough, has actually written a Doom script. Don't know if it's ever going to get made because of the Fox Disney deal now, unfortunately. But Noah Hawley is the creative force behind Fargo and most significantly Legion, which comfortably I think is one of the best, if not the best, comic book superhero TV series of all time. And I really think he understands kind of adapting that medium in a really, really great way, and I think he would be perfect for it. And just finally, Doom... Justice for Doom. That's all I say. Justice for Doom. And I really think this would be the best way to do it. So, best way to doom it.
Get out.
Alright, I'm leaving. Alright.
Okay.
So what about you?
So, mine's going to be a bit longer than that.
Okay.
Because I have gone in the mindset of I am a writer in 2005 trying to write this film using this cast and these licensing rights, which was really hard because my first pitch actually had, as I mentioned earlier, Namor as the main villain of the first one. And I realized, no, can't do that.
Can't do that.
So I'm like, let's see what other famous villains Fantastic Four have. And I'm like, yeah, it's basically just Doom and Galactus.
Oh, well, hey now, Mole Man isn't that bad. And the Fearsome Four, the Wizard, there's a few.
Yeah, I don't know if the Wizard will actually count, because he's technically just a Human Torch villain.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough.
But yeah, this is where the rights get confusing. Anyway, so here's what I plan on saying instead. It's kind of similar to the movie that we got, but a few major changes, effectively. First, I don't want the antagonistic relationship between Victor and Reed straight off the bat.
Oh, okay.
Basically, I want them... They're together. They're not friends, but they're also not enemies. They're business partners, and they're sort of enjoying it. Doom, like in the film, is funding it, but more because he's just basically they're both the scientists that could capitalize and commercialize on his inventions. So he just has the money, but he's the same sort of scientist that Reed is. And it's just them constantly sort of in a friendly rivalry of just who can sort of be better than the other one, which Victor takes a little far at times. But that's sort of mentioned, but not really sort of gone into. It very quickly just goes into them heading up into space and getting blasted with cosmic rays. All of them except Doom.
Oh, okay.
Doom doesn't get any powers. He may not even be on the ship. He's just sort of in the command center.
Okay.
But just watches his ship basically blow up and hit with cosmic rays, and the four basically come down. And they're like, oh shit, what the hell happened? What's going on? Help. Also, no relationship between Victor and Sue.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to get that clear. Just because I did not like it in the movie.
Yeah, that I'm okay with.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a real slimy bastard, and it's real gross. Yeah.
So, at this point, this is where I sort of diverge a bit more in the thing. Instead of them just accidentally sort of becoming heroes thanks to media and the press, it's Victor actively trying to save his company by going, look at what Doom Industries has sort of created this team. And he's basically the one going, yep, you guys can be heroes. We'll help fund you. We'll use Reed's unstable molecules to create a suit. You'll be great. And it'll save his company, basically. And so that's his whole thing. Then you have a whole thing of the team trying to deal with their powers, trying to learn it, getting confused. We have the bridge scene, because I actually kind of like that.
Okay.
But instead of it just being the thing breaking up everything, it's just a regular accident, and the Fantastic Four happen to be on the spot.
Oh, good. So they didn't actually cause all the incidents in the film like they do.
No, they actually just happen to be there while they're discussing with Victor. That's sort of his sort of idea of how he turns them into a team, is basically everyone sort of seeing all these incredible powers. Because that's basically what they are. They're famous celebrities who just happen to have powers and save the world. They turned the Baxter Building into this big sort of like tourist attraction. And it's basically just Victor going like, look at these. Look at my things. My company helped do this.
Look at my thing.
They're heroes.
Look at my thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at my thing. They're a real storm of entertainment and heroics.
Yeah, we finally got one in.
Yeah.
They're fantastic, one might say. I'm sorry. That was a stretch too far, but I couldn't resist. Anyway, as you were.
Anyway, so they basically dealing up between being celebrities and being actual heroes, and like, as well as trying to fix what's wrong. So Reed is basically, he's taken all of this on himself. He feels it's his fault, and he's trying to fix all of them. And he does.
Oh.
In a way, he basically creates his machine, but there are no dangers or stuff. He makes it earlier on, and he goes, if you want, Ben, I can fix you. And Ben says, yep, I don't want to be a giant rock monster for my whole life. Goes in, and it works fine. No Victor doing his whole ego thing.
Yep.
Victor, if anything, just helps out of like the trying to prove that he's better than Richards.
Yeah, okay.
He's just like, oh no, you can do this, and then sort of realizes, wait, why am I helping you? This is what's helping my company. And so he gets a little like freaked out, but it's like, okay, I can still manage with the terrific trio or whatever. And Ben basically goes off to the shadows, and Victor becomes the fourth Fantastic Four member.
Right.
And they then deal with their biggest issue, which is Mole Man. I was trying to save it as a surprise, but you ruined it.
Haha, sorry.
Because I feel he would be
I was not actually aware.
I feel he would be like the best way to sort of put it forward, because you can get giant creatures. You could have this big fight. The big climax is basically a giant dinosaur
Oh, cool.
that just rampages city with Mole Man on top of it, just going, I've lived under... Basically, the ending monologue for The Incredibles.
The Underminer.
Yes, just the Underminer again.
Oh, wow.
Because that is
great.
basically Mole Man.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong.
And so there's a big fight. There's sort of, up until this point, you've sort of seen hints. There's been earthquakes. There's been little things. That might have been what caused the bridge accident, was all this. And there's just a big fight at the end between Mole Man and the Fantastic Four with Victor. And Victor basically pulls back. He's like, man in the ear, being all controlled by him, trying to create this weapon thing. And in the end, while Reed, Sue, and Johnny are just getting the crap beaten out of them, they're saved at the last minute by Ben coming back as the Thing. Because he's like, family means more to me than what I look like. So he comes in and just takes it to the dinosaur. You have a big fist fight. Thing and the Fantastic Four, they regroup and basically take out the dinosaur and confront Mole Man. And it's like, we can help you. We don't want to have this end in bloodshed. We're going to try and help you. We can get you a lab. You can help us. You can be one of us. And then Victor comes out and is like, what the hell are you doing? And pulls out like his weapon. And Reed's like, no. Victor tries to fire it. It blows up in his hand because he was in a panic and didn't fix it right.
Okay.
Even Reed's going, that's not going to work. Blows up, gets a scar, and it's like, shit. And it's just like, sort of freaks out and it's like, and leaves. Just like, at the very end, you have Reed and Victor talking, and like, I can't do this. I can't be here. I'm going back home to Latveria. And he goes off on a plane, and you sort of have the Fantastic Four and the original Thing come out. Lots of flashing lights, and it's like, yay. We're the first family of New York. They're in New York, right?
Yeah, New York.
Generic city.
Right. Interesting.
And that is the first film.
Yep. Oh, here we go.
Then we have the second film. Yes, I really thought you'd trap in. This is going to take some time.
Yeah, no.
But I'll try and speed through it quickly. Basically, Silver Surfer, still the bad guy. Because he was great.
Okay.
Keeping him.
Okay, good.
And no Doom.
Oh.
You get flashes, so you sort of cut back to Latveria. But yeah, no actual, it's just Victor, no Dr. Doom yet. Basically, the Silver Surfer comes through in his big opening thing and wreaks a bit of havoc and basically causes Latveria to erupt in chaos. And a side plot that's going on with the main plot is basically Victor just becoming more angry and more obsessed at all this stuff that he knows he can fix, but struggling, and basically just takes over Latveria, becomes full Doom persona, and is like basically the dictator.
Right, okay.
And goes from being friend to basic villain. Because he's like, I'm gonna, at the very end, he's like, I'm gonna get my revenge because Reed did this, he ruined my beautiful face.
To set up a sequel?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
He ruined my beautiful face, he let this thing destroy my country. I'm gonna have my revenge. That's the sequel hook for the third movie. While we're having the main plot with Silver Surfer, because you now don't have Doom, it's a lot more just Surfer being a bit more antagonistic. And he's like, I have to do this for my planet, so your planet has to die. And the Fantastic Four are like, no, we like this planet, fuck you. And there's just skirmish, and they get their ass kicked by the Silver Surfer all over the place. The army tries to fight them, army gets wiped out. And it isn't until near sort of the midway point, around the same point that happened in the actual movie, Sue has managed to like talk to the humanity behind the Silver Surfer with a bit of help from Reed, sort of separating him from his board with the same sort of, I kind of like that scene in the forest. Maybe not in a forest, maybe just, I don't know, anywhere that looks interesting. Okay. Would be better. Sure. And no army. Because they were just, I don't know why they were there. Yeah. I love Andre Borel.
I think it's pronounced. Yeah.
But he wasn't that great in this.
No. His character is pretty superfluous as well.
Yeah. And so were all the others. I think there was one other named army person.
Oh yeah, the lieutenant.
The lieutenant who...
that Johnny Storm apparently has a thing with, but isn't really a thing.
No, so we just cast that aside. Johnny is just being Johnny. Being Chris, just let Chris Evans be Chris Evans.
Yeah, sure.
And that's fine. Don't even give him a script. Just let him wing it.
Apparently he did actually improv quite a few of his lines, which is interesting in the original film.
That proves my point.
Yeah,
just let Chris Evans be Chris Evans.
Yeah, there you go. He's got the muscles for it.
And basically, the end climax is there is no Galactus. It is just they're finally he's coming, but they don't know it. And you sort of had these hints. You see like a shadowy hand sort of in space, but that's it. And finally, in the end, Silver Surfer is like, after a big fight, he's like, no, I'm going to protect you. And he basically just creates a shield around the Earth, basically using his board. Effectively breaks it up, creates a shield, and protects the Earth from Galactus. So you don't see him, you save him up for a future movie.
Right, okay.
Basically,
You've got a long-running franchise in mind here, too.
Oh, I have 4 films.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, just to quickly summarize the third and fourth, if they were to be made.
Right.
Third is actual Doctor Doom movie, where he's finally back. He's got a fleshed out character now, and he has adequate reason for revenge.
Good.
As well as full diplomatic immunity. And basically, early on, he just kills Silver Surfer and takes his power, and that gives him the magic that we see in the comics, basically. Sure. And it also breaks up the shield. So in the fourth one, you actually have proper evil Galactus that they have to fight. And they can't just sacrifice Silver Surfer because he's already dead.
Cool. Okay, interesting. Yeah, well, that's a lot more extensive than I thought, to be honest. So, I do actually kind of like the idea in the first film that you sort of touched on in regards to them being celebrities as well, because that's one thing they kind of play up in the movie. It's weird because the original film could, in some weird tangential reality, can be read as kind of a critique of celebrity culture, in that they're essentially useless. Every problem they solve was originally caused by them in the first movie, and yet they're heralded and would like showered with money and praise and regarded sponsorships and regarded as heroes and everything. So if you think about it in a certain lens, it is kind of like a really cynical and almost clever way of looking about it. But the movie's not that smart. So, but I do kind of like you sort of playing into that a little bit more. It's nice. So, and the fact that Doom is closer to the comics. I'm still not sure if I'm okay with him starting as a businessman in that respect, but he moves into something more interesting down the line at the very least.
That was fun. And I wasn't even thinking as a businessman. It was just a scientist who just happens to have a lot of money.
Sure, okay. Yeah.
I don't want him in a suit. I want him in a lab coat.
Okay. That makes more sense. I can get behind that a little bit more.
A green lab coat with little circles and thing and
Of course. Yeah, it is kind of funny how in the film both Victor and Sue are apparently scientists, but not really scientists, in that they never do anything science related. So,
and I mean, they even allude to Sue Storm being the head of the genetics department.
Oh, yeah!
And she does nothing with the genes.
Yeah, it's a throwaway line at the beginning of the film, and all she does is like look over to some monitors and just repeat what Reed is saying. Oh, it's just... Anyway. Yeah. No, that'd be interesting. Yeah, so... Very good.
It sounds better in my head, I will admit, because I can picture everything.
Well, it's, I definitely think, as we've sort of touched on this whole episode, but there is a lot of potential when it comes to the Fantastic Four as being a really interesting franchise. And especially in the comics, the way they've tied into so many different other characters and tied so many things together, and how Doctor Doom is, obviously he's a main antagonist of the Fantastic Four, but he's also related to so much more in the universe. I really think even if you wanted to do a similar franchise like that, and if it was kind of related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something, that'd be great. Like, imagine if we had like a proper continuing Doctor Doom character in the MCU. How good would that be?
I'm just imagining the further bromances of Tony Stark and Reed Richards.
Oh boy, yeah, I
just
can get
add
behind
Bruce
that.
Banner and Doctor Strange in there, and you have just
Yes.
science bros to the max.
Yes, please. We can get the Negative Zone prison and all these other things. Oh, that'd be so good. Yeah, well, here's hoping that's what happens. As much as I'm afraid of the Disney deal, we'll see. We'll see. So yeah.
One final, do it differently. And I think we can both agree on. Just make the Incredibles.
Yeah,
Just do that.
just make the Incredibles. Yeah, except the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I could get behind that.
Cool. I think that's our consensus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we have been throwing this up. I wonder if it's worth doing an episode on The Incredibles. In that it's not necessarily based on a source material, but it draws so much from so many specific influences that I feel like there's a case to be made that it's a pseudo-adaptation. It's one of those weird kind of grey area middle grounds that we haven't delved into yet, but we probably will down the line, honestly. And I would take any opportunity to talk about The Incredibles, because that is probably my favourite superhero film, so... Yeah.
Syndrome is a fantastic villain. And basically a better Doctor Doom.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, a Doctor Doom crossed with like an annoying fanboy or something like that, which is also so pivotal to his character. The themes of Incredibles are so interesting, but it's a whole other thing. Yeah.
But look, he can just be a mannequin and be a better Doctor Doom.
Well, yeah, true. Hell, the Galactus Diarrhea Cloud is a better Doctor Doom than Doctor Doom. So,
At least the Diarrhea Cloud has hidden depths in terms of like a silhouette.
very true. There's a little bit more to him than a suit. Oh, okay. Well, if we want to move into what we've been watching / reading / etc. recently, so what have you got?
Shorted it down now this time.
Yeah, no, it's too much to keep it going. So, all right.
Yeah.
What have you got for us this week?
I am bringing back an old segment.
Oh, here we go.
Why does everything I love die? This is rubbish.
So yes, I'm bringing back Why Does Everything I Love Die? Because I'm talking about a TV show that lasted one season that stars Mr. Fantastic himself, Ewan Gruffin, called Forever.
Oh, related. I like it.
Yes, that is the only way I'm going to do these, because if I don't, it's just going to be every episode.
Sure.
Yes, it's sad. Everything I love does die.
Yeah. Well, everything dies. That's what happens. It's life. Let's move on.
It's got dark.
Yeah. So what about this show?
So yes, well, it's funny you bring up everything dies, because Forever is about an immortal.
Oh, so everything he loves does die, but he doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is effectively Sherlock in New York with an immortal.
Ooh.
So you have the character whose name eludes me at the moment.
Just
I'm
called by the
calling him
actor's
Ewan.
name. Yeah.
Ewan. He is basically a mortician at the police station, and he basically knows everything because he's seen everything. He's been alive since, I think it's 1800s,
Oh, wow. Okay.
early 1800s, and is basically can tell how everyone dies because he's seen how anything can kill anyone. And he basically, in the very first episode, he is in a train accident that was under nefarious themes, and he dies and then is reborn naked in the river. Basically, that's what happens. Every time he dies, he winds up naked in the river.
Oh, okay. Specifically the river in New
The same
York.
river, yes.
Okay, right. No wonder he lives there.
So yes, he basically then has to help the detective who takes him on his personal ME because he is a genius, basically.
Sure.
And there's only one person that knows about his secret, and that's Abe, this older guy who runs an antique store with him, which later turns out the antiques are just his old stuff that he just sells, just to get rid of some of the clutter. But yeah, it's really interesting. I do recommend it. So it has a really good cast as Ian Gruffin, as I mentioned earlier, as the lovely Henry, I think his name is. I'm
Just
trying
call
to
him by
remember.
his actor's name. It's fine. Yeah. We know who you're talking about.
Ewan. His assistant in the morgue is played by Joel David Moore.
Okay.
He was in Avatar and Dodgeball and just a few. He's around. You would recognize him. He's very distinctive.
Sure. He's one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the main bad guy, I guess, as close as you'll get to a bad guy, is another immortal
Oh,
in the show,
okay.
played by Bern Gorman, who is in things like Pacific Rim and Torchwood. And he is menacing as all hell in this.
It's probably someone else I would recognize as suspect.
Yes, he has a very distinct face as well. So yeah, that's my recommendation, even if it is only one season and ends on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Oh, damn, okay.
Yeah, I know, I hate that.
Was there a specific reason that it ended? As in, was it just bad ratings, or...?
That's what they claim, although the fact that its DVR rewatches kept going on after it was cancelled, and DVD sales did pretty damn well.
Okay.
So it's not entirely sure, but they claim it's because of poor live watching.
Right, okay. Oh, that's unfortunate, because that actually does sound pretty interesting. How many episodes in the first season?
I believe it was close to about 20.
Oh, wow, okay. So a full season launch. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, okay, good stuff. That actually does sound pretty interesting. I hadn't heard of that one before, so... Right, mine for this, in order to maintain thematic consistency with me, I'm going to recommend a vaguely obscure movie.
You're really on brand, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I like to keep things consistent, so it's I recognize the futility of this, but I am going to recommend a foreign language Oscar film on a podcast about the Fantastic Four. But I recently watched a movie called The Lives of Others, which is a 2006 German film about this basically surveillance culture during the 1970s, the divide between the East and West Berlin, and follows this specific interrogator who gets assigned to follow this writer around and try and figure out if he's against the government. And so they bug his apartment and everything like that.
Traitor?
Sorry?
Is he like a traitor or an anarchist or something?
Yeah, something along those lines. Like, just a dissident. Just anyone who's kind of opposes the regime. And so basically they fill his house with bugs and everything like that. And the film just follows essentially this interrogator, this agent, uncovering the lives of the person just through the audio and such, about what he's going through. And he has a change of heart, and there's a whole series of events and everything like that, which I won't spoil. But basically it's a really interesting kind of drama/political thriller set in a really interesting time period. And it's just a very, very good movie. I don't really want to go too much into details because a lot of the stuff that works really comes later. But it's really detail-oriented and quite beautiful and just a really interesting character piece. And I recommend everyone check it out if you can. Which I don't know is going to be anyone, considering we're talking about the Fantastic Four, and that's a very different wheelhouse. But I think it
sounds like I'd have to do reading.
Well, yeah, it is in German. It is a foreign language film, and it actually won. It's probably not going to be a good thing for most people, but it did win Best Foreign Language Movie at the Oscars that year. But yeah, I think it's just really quite an interesting movie and well worth seeing. Well, thank you to everyone who listened to this episode of Medium Shift. We can be found at mediumshift@gmail.com. Feel free to just send whatever the hell you want. We're still accepting bitcoins. We'll accept, I don't know, PDFs and attached photos. Please don't put anything virus related in there because we're not tech savvy as is, so we don't want to stretch the limits.
And I checked this email at work, so limit the nudes to tasteful.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. So next episode we're going to have a plan, shall we say? That was a terrible accent.
Yeah, I'm trying to work. I know we're doing the Italian job.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to work out what the accent was.
I was trying to do Michael Caine. It's like Michael Caine, but
sounded more like Sean Connery.
Yeah.
I'm like a bad one at that.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, but
we're doing the remake of the Italian job.
Yes. While also talking about the original as well, which is where that line comes from. But yeah, so feel free to stick around for that. That's going to be an interesting one. American remakes, as we know, we already have an amusing track record with. So until next time, fare thee well.
Bye.